especially for women in the society, they grew up in a way, most of the time, they're asked, you need to understand the person in front of you. And for men or the boys, when they grow up, they can fight it out, they can voice it, they can do it competitively, and they can express it. So what happens for women...
And suppress can be by different ways, by just shutting it down or by medicating it, working, alcohol, sex. There are so many ways that people try to medicate it, or drugs abuse, not to feel it. But the problem with that is...
You grow up in a family where people only express their anger just by yelling or shouting or screaming. So you learn when you grow up...
I'm hearing you, because that's very important. And not I'm hearing you, really making sure, is this what you're saying? So that you're really on the same page, mirroring, reflecting, paraphrasing. You know, the listening skills, I think, is therefore so important.
And you suddenly have this outburst. And people might think, oh my God, just because of that, you got angry with me. But that's not that. It was happening for the last 5 days because they feel like, okay, no one understands our grief. And the grievances that we're going through, the suffering we're going through, no one is listening to us. We are trying to tell them there's a problem. So from that sense of injustice, when there's injustice happening, you have your sense of threat is heightened. So you're like, okay, threat is coming. I need to protect myself. So how would you protect yourself? So it's probably expectation, but lack of communication.
Yes.
So then you realize, okay, that's my trigger, but have I communicated? You find out, that's your clarity.
Listen carefully. I think this is so powerful. I wish that more leaders would embrace this. Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
If you hire people that are smaller than you, we become a company of dwarves. But if you hire people that are bigger than you, you become a company of giants.
Welcome to Knowing Who You Are on weekly conversations with Ershad and Marco, where coaching meets real life. As you know, people who have been watching it regularly every week, we come on Tuesday and we discuss topics that are important for us to operate in this world, along with people in the society, within the community. So today we have another important topic we'll be discussing about, and it's anger. We'll be talking about what anger actually is, when anger is harmful, and when anger can be channelized to make it more useful for us, and what other things along the way that we can watch out. I've been fortunate to have Marco with me, Marco Stefano, to discuss this topic as usual, and it's always a lively and very interesting conversation we have every week. So Marco, welcome to the show.
Yes, glad to be here again. You know, looking forward to this topic.
It's a very big one. I was like, oh my God, there's so much data, so many things to discuss. And since it touches upon our emotion, I mean, how we express ourselves, that's where it's very delicate. Because you cannot say it's just very binary. Either is this or that, but there's some other subtleties to it too. Anger can be harmful. When I say that, it means that anger can be useful too. So let's start with, how do you look at anger? What is anger according to you?
Well, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Well, anger is, of course, one of the range of emotions. I began to realize how I think for me, when I view anger, I view other emotions in a similar fashion. And what I mean by that is, anger is a signal that it provides data. And I see that with every emotions, because I used to be, and I don't know if people recognize that when they listen, oh, that's a very bad emotion, or that's very negative emotion, and that's very positive, and that's very good emotions. And I begin to realize I don't want to judge the emotion in itself, because personally I believe emotions are not bad or good, or positive or negative. They are basically data that try to tell us something, and are we paying attention? And therefore, whatever the emotion is, in this case, we're talking about anger. Anger is trying to tell us something.
Yeah.
And are we paying attention? And it's like what comes to mind, because that's to do with my early days when I wanted to become a pilot. In the cockpit, there are different lights, and most of the time double or triple, in order to alert the pilot if there is something off, right? And if that light is blipping, it's basically telling us, pay attention, something you need to do. But the lamp in itself is neutral.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I feel is the same with emotion. Emotion is neutral. So what I want to move away from judging it, I want to basically being curious about it and recognizing, okay, I'm feeling anger rising or frustration. What is this about? What is happening here? For me, anger personally, looking back over my life where there were incidents, tends to be when boundaries were crossed or things were being violated. And then my initial response was anger as an emotion. There's always a mixture, by the way. I don't personally believe it's only one strong emotion. Tends to be a twin or triple, but one tends to be more dominant. That's true. And if I'm honest, when I was younger, I didn't have the appropriate tools how to deal with it.
I mean,
I've
neither
learned that.
did I. I feel like still I work through it in a different way, but as we go, along the way, as we are living our life, day-to-day life, and we have our interactions with people, outside strangers, and even people we know for many years, we learn every day that things we could have done better. But it reminds me what you just said. Interestingly, in 1977, there is a psychology professor. When he was going to conferences, what happened? Every time he would find that other people or his contemporaries always would say, this is a base instinct, because anger is always related to something a little bit dark, negative. And I will explain where it comes from. And during the time, he would get frustrated thinking that, okay, if it's a base instinct, how come we feel these emotions all the time? And how come it comes to us? And there's definitely some kind of use for it. So what he did during the time, he had done a survey which had like 14-page long questionnaire.
Wow.
And he thought it would be such an unpopular survey. And after the survey, he asked the people who had taken part, the participants, and they said most of them they said they really liked it, because according to them, they normally get angry a few times a week or sometimes several times a day. And the second thing they said, that every time they got mad, they were likely to change things for the better. They would make a bad situation good. So it shows that if you know how to move your anger in a safer place, that what you can do with this emotion.
Yes, yeah, that's really appropriate. And it reminds me about anger can be different manifestations, not only about a violation or boundary crossed. You can even be angry when somebody, which we touched upon earlier in one of our earlier talks about grief and loss, that you feel angry, particularly when maybe somebody dies just suddenly. And so you're not confronted with a complete new scenario. Can be practical, like financial bills, or or any other practicalities that normally is maybe known smooth, now suddenly is disrupted. So anger can manifest in different ways. I would want to highlight, though, which I think, but feel free to correct me in this, people associate very quickly frustration also as anger. And frustration is different for me. Frustration is you try to achieve something and it's not happening.
I might add some data which will make you feel like probably I'm disagreeing a little bit, because there are certain myths related to anger. You might add to it too. Say, for example, these are the myths that I've come across and which I found really true and interesting. One is that you should suppress your anger. That's one thing we learn to do, especially for women in the society. They grew up in a way, most of the time, they're asked, you need to understand the person in front of you. And for men or the boys, when they grow up, they can fight it out, they can voice it, they can do it competitively, and they can express it. So, what happens for women when they grow up? More or less, they cannot voice it, and they struggle with the anger competence. And you'll find that their expression is tear. So most of the time, and for men, societally, we are told that men shouldn't cry, they shouldn't express it too emotionally. So they
Yeah.
express it through anger and rage or by
Yes.
raising their voice. And for women, it's
Yes.
just silent tears. So that's where
Yeah.
I was saying that that's frustration. You see that, and that's a form of anger too. And I take that those tears that are coming out and they cannot voice it, that's a kind of frustration. And but that at the same time is anger, but they cannot express it the way a man can. That's
Well, that's a good point, and I would just reflect back on my working with women as well, besides men. So I go through all my memory files, so to
yeah.
speak, of my engagement with people, and that's true. I think there's a cultural conditioning that can go on, even religious, because a certain religious circle, you ought not to be showing anger, whether that's
Even
to
racial, even racial.
or racial, or
Yeah.
it could be, if it could be in many areas.
Mm,
But even if people believe in God, you can't show anger to God, for example, or anger to authority figures. So if that's all being suppressed for all kinds of different reasons, and suppressed can be by different ways, by just shutting it down or by medicating it, which of course can be by many different ways, by working, alcohol, sex. There are so many ways that people try to medicate it, or drugs abuse, not to feel it. But the problem with that is we are then tranquilizing it temporarily, which may give a relief in the moment, but it's not going away. And I
exactly.
always say to people, when you bury emotions, you bury them alive. So one day you will have an earthquake. And when there is an earthquake, it tends to create damage.
It's like a champagne bottle, isn't it? If you think about
Oh,
it,
yeah.
you just have this suppressed and then you shake it, shake it, shake it. There is a moment when you let it go, there's a huge outburst.
Yes. And I can give you a personal example. Is that okay to share?
Yeah, yeah,
Because that
please.
might also help the listeners. This had to do with my dad passing away. Well, it's now over 20 years now, which was very suddenly.
Mm,
And in the aftermath, there was a lot of anger surfacing in me. And in the time with my partner, who basically voiced it, you're really tense. I can really feel there's anger, which to me was like, I need to pay attention here. And I didn't want to be expressing that to her. And this is where I want to highlight anger needs to be expressed, but in a safe context, never into violence or in aggressiveness. That to me is the wrong way of handling it. But you do have to acknowledge. So I recognized at that time frame I need some help. So I thought a therapist, basically trying to vocalize, what is happening. And the interesting thing was, he gave me a boxing ball, right? And I had to vocalize specifically what I was angry about. And of course, this had to do with upbringing, father, dynamics, etc. And my own, also my own disappointment. And as I start expressing, there came so much energy out of me. The boxing balls are all the walls, right? Now, here was the interesting thing. Once the energy was released in a safe context and verbalized and expressed and acknowledged, not judged, right? Not put down, oh, you can't say that. It was basically being held. It was like you say, the cork was being released, and then all the uncertainty surfaced, the insecurity surfaced, the loneliness surfaced. So it was for me, and this is a picture that came to mind before I went to the therapist, which I forgot to tell. I was at the time in a church service, just sitting there wrestling with my dad passing, and I was really uncomfortable, not right in my skin. And I had a vision. And in the vision, I saw an World War II mine floating in the ocean. You know, those ones with those pins. So as soon as you touch them, explode. When a ship touches them, they explode. And I had heard a voice basically instructed me, Marco, I want you to touch the mine.
Mm.
And I said, there's no way I'm going to touch that because I'm terrified what's going to happen. And that's basically also what I felt. If I'm going to deal with this anger, I can't guarantee what's going to happen.
Mm.
And now this sounds maybe very spiritual, so feel free how people will interpret this, but to me it was really powerful. I heard then, may I touch it?
Mm.
And I saw the person touching the mine and exploded with it. And as soon as I saw that happening, I cried. And I knew immediately, oh my gosh, it's safe to explore. I need to deal with this. And that made me reflect later on.
How old were you?
I was, well, that's 20 years ago.
Okay.
You know, so you don't know my age.
Yeah, okay. Do we hear insecurity there? No. Sorry, I'm not going to do that. Let's not do that. No. I take my words back.
I'm a half century, so
I shouldn't say that now.
Oh, no worries. It's out in the open. Everyone knows.
No, because we are like in a coaching situation. When we do that, I'm like, okay, then I realize, no, I shouldn't come after my partner.
No, I have no problem with it. But that made me realize how many people have minds floating in the ocean.
Yeah.
Because you see, minds don't disappear if you don't deal with them. And that was also what the voice was telling me. If you have learned to live with it, but I want you to engage with it. And that terrified me initially. And I think that applies to a lot of people's situation. They walk around, man, woman alike, doesn't matter what age, and have a floating mind in their lives, and they're not, for all kinds of different reasons, and please hear me, I don't mean it in any way judgmental, more like a diagnose, you're not dealing with it, but the danger, so to speak, the protection shield is still there. And once you start dealing with it, and in my case I had a therapist helping me, there was a relief, but then also all the other pain surfaced, and that's where I got my healing and my relief. And so I realized anger can be a protection shield.
Yeah.
In order to protect yourself for further harm, and that becomes a big barrier, and it can come across, depending on personality, in different ways. But once you penetrate it, or you remove it, then the real person, or whatever it is, comes to the surface. And I think that taught me anger is not the problem. It's a signal. And it's
trigger.
The trigger, and what are we doing with it? And we need to deal with it because I do believe, and sadly you see that in our society, when anger gets so explosive, people get harmed, and that is the wrong way of dealing with it. So to go back again, emotion is a signal. That means you have to trace it back to what is the cause and deal with the cause. Never with the symptom. You need to deal with the cause and figure out, and most of the time either seek help, what is this all about?
I'm getting so many cues from you. I'm like, which one to touch first? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Free to jump in. But that to me is also be my own life lesson, and listening to other people.
No, that's the problem. I feel with anger, we look at anger as a negative thing because most of the time we say anger or rage is the same thing. I mean, anger, whenever we understand that one, whenever we lash out on someone, either it's a person or an object.
Yeah.
And that's how we are expressing it. So I was started with talking about the myths. Say the first myth is suppression, which you touched upon nicely. But based on that, there are a lot of people who express their anger in different ways as well. I'll talk about it. But the second one is another interesting one, which also you touched upon, which is we always think that we are the best judges of who's angry. We can tell this person is angry because there are a lot of research with this one, as I was saying, that there racial discrimination involved, there gender-based discrimination involved, because there's an example in 2018, Serena Williams in US Open, she had an argument on the court with the referee, and she was slammed with this, the highest fine, $17,000. And at the time, the person who had written, I think is the New York Post, and he had written that she acted like a sore loser. Then in 2020, Novak, what's his name? Djokovic.
Yeah.
So he had similar argument, regarding a serve with the referee, and he lashed out and he threw the ball towards a line umpire, and it hit her in the throat.
Ooh.
And then he was disqualified. Then the same person had written that it was very harsh towards him. So when it was Serena Williams, it's a woman, and also
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
say from a racial point of view as well, she was a sore loser for having the argument. But when he literally attacked and he had an outburst as well, it was a loss for US Open, or it was too harsh. Same thing happened with young black students in schools,
Yeah.
middle
Yeah.
schools, high schools. They are considered as troublemakers when they're
Yeah.
compared to their contemporaries who are white.
Yeah.
And also in countries, say for example, in America, same country, different regions. Say in New York, you'll hear people would be cursing at each other. They're very rude with each other. But then in other parts of the country, say in the South, even though someone is in front of you a little bit slow,
Yeah.
but they would voice it in a different way, rather in a sarcastic or making some suggestion, but very
Yeah.
mildly. So they
Yeah.
might even say that, don't rush on my account, when they're
Yeah.
trying to say that you're a bit too slow, even though they're considering they're slow. But they're
Yeah.
saying that in a way, not saying that, please, can you please hurry up? They're not
Yeah.
saying this. As we are talking about races as well. So normally when we think about Asian people, so we think, yeah, they are genius and also mild mannered. But compared to other races, we think, say, for example, it's Russian or Israelis. It's been found in research that they are more comfortable with
Yeah.
confrontation.
Yeah.
But and if you think about Japanese people
Yeah.
or Swedish, they are a little bit conflict avoidant.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of researchers, but then we think that we can understand who's angry, who's not. Because
Oh,
a male, from the point of infancy, when they grow up, normally the
yeah.
face of a man is
Yeah.
always perceived to be angrier compared to a woman.
Yeah.
It's a perception that we have.
I could relate to that. I give you an example from a woman who was after a workshop, and she started sharing a part of her life story, and a part quite traumatic,
Mm.
um, and became very angry. It just became manifest,
Mm.
and I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel it was about me, and she caught herself and said, "Well, why are you not doing anything?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Well, what do you want me to do? Because I know this is not about me, but it feels like
Mm.
this anger has been so long built up, and you need space to express it. So that's what
Mm.
I do." And then she started to cry
Mm.
because she was always previously shut down because
Yep.
people said, "You can't do this, you can't do this." And again, and of course, I think culture conditioning, upbringing,
Oh
parenting,
yeah.
modeling. There are so many different ways how people are taught how to deal with emotions. I think in leadership, for example, I read a post about it a while ago. Is even with female leadership and male leadership, that when male leadership are aggressive, that's being tolerated, and if a woman has a clear vision or has a clear boundary, then suddenly she's aggressive.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm thinking, what's going on here? She's not aggressive. She's just basically making a strong point, and that's it.
Yeah.
Just because she knows who she is, she knows her worth, she's confident, and that's it. But somehow that's being interpreted, oh, you're bossy, or you're controlling, you're assertive. But if a man does it, that is being normalized. And I'm thinking, that's nuts.
Mm.
Sorry, I may not say that.
No, that's considered as strength. Like, okay,
And I
strong
don't think it's
leadership. Yeah.
I don't think it's leadership at
No,
all.
no,
If
not
a
at all.
man is angry, aggressive in his leadership style, to me that highlights there's something misaligned, not integrated, because that is an internal side job.
Mm.
And that, if you develop awareness, and this ties in with emotional intelligence, how do I deal with this more healthily, more properly?
I
But
remember a
again,
leader, let me just jump in and share this. I was
yeah,
surprised once he said that. that one of his team members, someone who was under him, and he's in a very powerful position in the company. So they needed time because they belong to a certain religion, so they have to go for their prayers.
Yeah.
And he thought that it's a waste of time for the company. He fired that person. He said, I fired him. And he was just saying as if nothing happened. I was quite surprised. I mean, from which point of view should I consider this one? Lack of emotion, lack of consideration, or I really was quite lost for words, to be honest. And that person was looking at it as his strength because he, first of all, hold that power to do that. And on top of that, how he said that very dismissively, he said, yeah, I got rid of him.
Well, I don't think it's power. I think it's poor
Exactly.
leadership.
Yeah, and it's, if anything, it's abuse of power.
Yeah, it's wow. Don't get me there. Of course, and this is what I mean. It infiltrates also leadership. As we touched upon it before our call, leaders have such a huge responsibility how to regulate their emotions and master their inner world. And if they don't do that, it always spills over in their leadership style, how they communicate. And with men, sadly, it seems to be more normalized. The same like being bossy, being dominant, being controlling. To a certain extent, although nowadays people are much more vocal about it, that it is micromanaging and all that stuff unhealthy. But to me, regardless of gender, because I want to move away from making things gender specific, because then we create all these echo chambers, which I want to avoid. Mm-hmm. To me, the key with regardless of your gender is you have responsibility of your own inner world, no one else. Mm-hmm. You cannot outsource that to anyone. You are responsible what's going on the inside. And that means if you have emotional baggage and you're not dealing with it and you're in a leadership position, you do not only yourself a disfavor, but you start to harm the people around you, whether you recognize that or not. Mm. And I've noticed people who take responsibility and agency and sort that out. And it doesn't mean they are perfect, but they are more emotionally integrated. Therefore, they are much more at peace. They're much more at calm. They recognize the triggers and learn to neutralize them, not to avoid it, not to suppress it, but how to manage them in the appropriate way. They become the most effective leaders. Compared to those who basically don't deal with it and get away with it with seemingly like, well, I'm just, people are walking around on eggshells because the person is just like a time bomb, like a mine waiting to explode. Yeah. And that to me, and it sounds maybe a bit passionate, but for me, that is so important that leaders, regardless of your level, that you take that personal responsibility and solve your minds if you are aware you have them. Or if other people point them out that you have them. That's another indicator. But anyway, that's...
That reminded me, because you said that, okay, don't get me started. There's another myth that is that you should vent your anger, even though the first one is you should suppress your anger. But suppressing and venting, these are two different things. When you're saying that, no, don't suppress it, you need to, I'm going to get to that one too, that how to express our anger and why it's not good to suppress our anger. But at the same time, when people say that vent your anger, but most of the time venting means, as you said, punching bags. And there are a lot of other ways that you just take the rage out. But most of the time, this kind of venting happens either on other people, we take it out on other people or object. Either we express it in a way that we feel embarrassed. If you look back and we have expressed it in a certain way, we said something to us, we harmed people, even people, sometimes you'll find that they love someone, but they couldn't control their anger. They did some kind of harm physically, mentally. They induced the fear. They made them scared. It could be their children, their partners, or they probably punched the wall so hard that their fist went inside and they have a big hole on the wall now. If we vent it this way, that's the problem. And most of the time, even researchers, it's been found that when we vent our anger in such an outrage, we are likely to have a heart attack. And that likelihood is like 8 times higher. Wow. So it's interesting because the suppression, on one hand, when you suppress it, you go into depression,
Yeah,
you can have blood pressure, increased blood pressure.
yeah,
And there are other health conditions. Physically, you will suffer. It will show in your behavior. It
yeah,
will show in your relationship patterns. It will show your appearance. It will show
yeah,
in other attributes. But
yeah,
at the same time, when you're venting, if you feel that, you need to vent it and take it out on others rather than moving it in a safer place, as you said, that are you safe to do so? Because in certain families or even cultures, you grow up in a family where people only express their anger just by yelling
yeah,
or shouting or screaming. So you
yeah,
learn when you grow up that if I'm angry, I have to express my anger in that way. I have to scream and shout because that's how you're conditioned.
yeah.
And there are places in families, many people might be able to relate to it, where it's not safe to express your anger, or there's only one person, one member of the family who are allowed to express their anger.
And that creates then a power problem, because if only one is allowed to express it and you have feel anger, then either your anger is already being shamed or conditioned or suppressed or blamed. You can't feel that way. You are not allowed to, but it's
Mm.
still there. And so it's not being acknowledged. It's not being expressed and in a safe kind of context. And that can create problems in itself. And
And
once
also
it's out of
sometimes
this,
speaking up,
yeah,
when you do that, as I was saying initially, that you're trying to make a bad situation right, one thing,
yeah,
and when you are wrong. Because if we constantly tell ourselves that anger or being angry is not right, it's always the wrong thing, when you're being wronged and you need to voice your
yes,
dissatisfaction and you need to voice it to stop that wrong being happening to you, then you don't do it and you accept it. That's another
yes.
kind of problem that can happen from that.
Well, and this ties me to another problem which creates, because that's what I'm hearing from other people listening to them. They know that there has been a violation or boundary crossed. Tends to be happening in codependent relationships or people pleasing or dominant controlling dynamics that can even into violence, domestic
Mm.
violence. How do you then say no? Because you feel immediately threatened, maybe even your life in danger. So that's where it becomes very tricky, because the dynamic is such. Even if I want to say this, you can't do this, there's a fear of repercussion
Mm-hmm.
because it's not safe.
Yeah.
And that has an effect also on our body. And that's why it's so important when you find yourself in those kind of scenario, I would suggest seek help,
Yeah.
at least with safe friends who are not judgmental or advice giving in that sense, but basically can provide you holding space, a safe space, or even necessary seek help with
Mm.
a counselor or therapist or coach in order to process it. But those are very tricky scenarios because I can relate to that. I
Mm.
think looking back, and now going many years back, I was emotionally shut.
Mm.
I didn't even show emotions. That started for me to happen when I was in my 20s.
Mm.
Before that, I was emotionally walled for all kinds of different reasons, because for me it was not safe. I never felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to express emotions is already kind of a world. And I've noticed that working with people, so many people particularly in the West, I don't know if that's, you recognize this. We respond logically, intellectually on
Mm.
situations. And when I ask, well, what was the feeling that you felt in that moment? And they answer them logically and
We
say,
even
well,
judge
that's,
ourselves when we are expressing it.
yes. And then I said, but that's not an emotion. And so people then struggle to identify, well, what is the emotion then? And sometimes I give them a list and then they
Mm.
realize, oh my gosh, there are so many emotions. I don't know which one to choose.
People have also named them, like how you express your anger based on that they have categorized. Say, for example, someone is an anger suppressor,
Mm-hmm.
which we have touched upon already, people who suppress and what kind of risk you can run into. Then there's anger projector, someone who's literally punching a hole into the wall or harming someone else. But for that, as you're saying, that talking to someone, seeking help, there's an interesting tip I read, and I feel that this is very useful, which I made a video about, I think, a few years back. So it's psychologists call it TIP, TIPP. The T is temperature. So say,
Yeah.
for example, if you have a splash of cold water on your face, your temperature physiologically, you calm it down. Then the
Yeah.
interesting second one is I, intense
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah.
So suddenly, say on the same place, you start jogging or just jumping,
Yeah.
something like that to keep yourself, that give yourself physiologically, again, to slow it down, you're emotionally, you are
Yeah.
backing off.
Yeah.
And the third one is P, which is pace breathing.
Yeah.
So for breathing, say, for example, if you want to get yourself ready for a situation, there one way of breathing, which is you inhale quickly, you exhale quickly. So you're like,
Yeah.
so you're getting ready because your heart is pumping quicker. But
Yeah.
then if you do pace breathing to calm yourself down, before I do it a lot of the time before I'm going for a concert, I'm called on the stage just before that. No matter how much preparation I have, you
Yeah.
always have this tension when I'm
Yeah.
say I'll be singing, I'll be playing. So at the time, the ideal scenario is say if you do inhalation, say if you inhale for 4 seconds, like hold it for 4 seconds, then
Yeah.
let it go 8 seconds. So it's a
Yeah.
longer exhale. So
Yeah.
when you do that, it calms you down. You have to
Yeah.
do it 3, 4 times, and even sometimes before going to bed, I do that. And the last one is progressive muscle movement. So
Yeah.
if you just clench, unclench, even no one can see it, you're
Yeah.
like, you're shaking and your voice is quivering and you're trembling. Then you just clench, unclench. So this tip, TIPP, is a good tip, I feel,
Yeah. Yeah.
for anger projectors.
Yeah. Sounds really practical. It reminds me of another one, which is a slightly different angle. That is when you feel overwhelmed in a
Mm,
situation. Could be by somebody who's controlling or aggressive and demands an answer from you. I learned this, for example, many years ago when I felt suddenly provoked and I did felt anger rising. I realized this is not a good moment to say anything.
yeah.
So I said, I really want to talk further, but I really need to go to the toilet.
Yeah. Moving yourself away sometimes.
So I move away myself, which is
Yeah.
the first, I call it DID principle, detach.
Mm,
So in this case, physically, I detached myself from the situation. And as I did, identify, which is the second letter, what is really happening here?
mm,
How would I want to respond? What is a helpful response? And then the third D, or the third letter D, is decide, and then decide how am I going to respond.
mm.
So when I went to the toilet, um, contemplating how I would respond, I slowed down.
Mm,
So the emotion temperature, as you would describe it, is getting lower. Therefore, your emotional brain is then also more going slower. Therefore, your logical brain can then be more activated, because I can tell you, if you are in a high emotional state, you cannot think logically. So if you ever found yourself on a high explosive alert, pause,
mm,
detach yourself, identify what is happening here, how do I want to respond, make a decision. And even that decision could mean, when you go back, you know what, I really need more time to think about this, I will come back to you tomorrow with an answer. For example, it can take the edge off.
mm.
If people feel like, I really want to do something, but that's not appropriate, then detach yourself.
No, that's very important because it's related to the trigger point, I feel.
Yeah.
So that's why. So the first myth I was saying, you should suppress your anger. Second one, we discussed already. We can judge people, but we are most of the time making wrong judgment as to who's angry, who's not. It's a man, woman, gender, culture, whatever.
Yeah.
Then the third one we are saying, we touched upon as well, is you should vent, but how you're venting, that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And then the last one, which is we always think that when you have an outburst, is just happening from one event, one particular specific
Yeah.
thing that's just happened and you got angry. That
Yeah.
is the mistake, because things can fester inside us, and
Yeah.
many things, series of events that's happening. Say, for example, someone goes to work and there's an unfavorable condition and you have to put up with that one day in, day out. And
Yeah.
through your 5 days of work, you go through that. And Sunday, you're having brunch with your wife. And suddenly she says something. She said, oh, you didn't turn off the oven or something. And you suddenly have this outburst.
Yeah.
And people might think, oh my God, just because of that, you got angry with me. But that's not that. It was happening for the last 5 days, which that was the trigger point.
Yeah.
So this is important. That's why to know what my trigger point is. So you
Yes.
need to observe anyone who tends to get angry. And I work on it too. There are moments I'll see I want things to be done in a certain way. And I see it's not done straight up.
Ooh.
And I feel something inside. To be honest with you, as you said, because I have studied my trigger points. What makes me a little bit uncomfortable, I would say, then I feel a little bit of emotion. Something runs through my body because physiologically your brain is sending signal.
Yeah.
Physiologically, that's how you express your emotion. I just slow down. I said, wait, give yourself time. Why are you feeling like this? Don't
Yeah.
get angry at that person or with that person and at the situation. Take a time. Think. Is it really a big thing? Can you sort it out yourself rather than thinking, why hasn't it been done the particular way you want it to be?
Yeah.
So, trigger point is a very important thing. And I'll talk about it. You add to it. Then I'll talk about it in terms of what we can do to find those trigger points. What are
Oh, they
there are
will
some
find you.
interesting exercises.
Oh, triggers will find you. I think as soon as you have a trigger, I always say triggers are invitation for healing.
Mm,
And that means as soon as you feel triggered, and that tends to manifest in an overreaction, that's always a clue.
mm,
It's never the person concerned. The person might be the press button, but it's something to do in your prehistory, in your history, that you have not resolved, or there's still residue there that you haven't dealt with, and it's still sensitive.
it's like the
And
last straw that breaks the camel's back, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
And it has
and
nothing to do with that. I mean, you just keep on putting and you are piling up, piling up, piling up. And that one thing, you can't take it anymore. It's like the champagne bottle we're talking about. It just comes out.
yeah, and for example, to trace it back to my own story with my dad passing away, I think when the death was so definite, because death means there's no resolution possible, no restoration, no closeness of relationship, whatever. It's just over. It's finito.
Mm-hmm.
So that definiteness brought the anger to the surface of now I can't do anything about it. And then all the unresolved things that I would have wanted to have said or earlier resolved that possibly I should have done earlier, but I didn't have the awareness when I was younger or the tools to deal with that in such a mature way, came out.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one I wanted to highlight because you mentioned something about boundaries. So, for example, if you would be angry with me, right, and you start shouting and screaming at me, then I would basically say back and say, well, I understand that I can see clearly that you're upset, but I don't like the way how you're treating me unless you change your tone and respect me. And if not, I rather leave and we come back when you calm down. It's very important to communicate your boundary because it comes back to how people express their anger. It still needs to be respectful, right?
Yeah.
The other person is not the the punch bag. It needs to be respectful. And to be honest, and I had it, looking back, if I said to someone, I really feel angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the energy. There's no manifestation of fists or whatever. It's just acknowledging I really feel angry. And the anger is about, and then I identify this is what the anger was. And I don't appreciate it. And I wanted to see this resolved, but also recognize some of these things are outside of my control. This is very important. And some of this in my control. And I sometimes think, I don't know if you can relate to this, anger can also be a mask. Because our ego is not being worshipped. Our ego is not being affirmed. We don't get the attention that we thought we should get, and that's now not being acknowledged. That's a different type of anger. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. I'm just thinking, as you're saying, I'm trying to give myself some kind of example, or trying to find an example from around me. Can you clarify a little
Well,
bit more?
I had a leader who basically got angry with me because he basically used his authority of that I should submit to him.
Mm.
And I think it was triggered, and I must say I was much younger at that time.
Hmm.
Probably my mentor used to say you could have said that possibly differently, but he was witness, and he was present, and he said I can understand why you said it because it
Mm.
was really there was some fairness in it, but possibly you should have said it differently. But hey, I was young. Uh, One of the things I said to him, well, because he said, well, I have the authority here. I'm the one
Mm.
who makes the decision. I said, well, the more you start talking about authority, the less you have it for me. And that triggered him.
I can now think about it. I can relate to it because suddenly it just popped up, and especially people who are watching it from South Asia, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, India, if they're listening to it, they might be able to relate to it more because in the West, people have, even though they want to do it, they use some kind of filtration. But in those countries I just mentioned, especially in my country of origin, in Bangladesh, you'll see most of the leaders, and these days the kind of videos I watch on social media, most of the
Yeah,
leaders, you'll be thinking seriously you'd like this person to be a leader, and this is how he talks to you, treats you. They walk into a room, a journalist would ask them a question,
yeah,
straight away they can't answer it without raising their voice or being rude to them.
yeah, yeah,
And this is one way the supporters are like, yeah, that's our strong leader, look at him.
yeah.
This
That
is
to me is not strength. It's not strength.
exactly. This is how can it be strength that you are trying to gain your power by inducing fear in other people, and this is very obsolete way of leading people. And this has always been there in the world, that you make people scared to follow you so you can lead them. But people do that; they don't love you. They are
Exactly.
scared.
Well,
They just follow you and they just do whatever you say until they gain enough power to topple you.
yes. And to be honest, and this sounds maybe not nice to hear, but it's a scaffolding persona.
Mm.
Because if you have to rely on fear and domination and intimidation and shouting and pointing or whatever how you want to express it, that to me only highlights your internal, you don't have inner authority. You don't have inner substance to have the backbone to sit, to stand in who you are. So in order to compensate that, you then result into these kind of manifestations. So for me, if I hear that, and I've been exposed to it, and of course, when I was younger, I was really hurt by it and didn't know how to deal with it and blah, blah, blah. That's a different journey. But to me, it's just an indicator. You have no understanding what true leadership is about
And no
because
control as
you have
well.
no control. You have no mastery over your own inner world.
Yeah.
And mastery, I don't mean mastery of suppressing it, mastery how to manage the emotions. It's okay to be angry, and I really want to highlight.
And how can you be someone else's mentor when you cannot control yourself? You don't have
Yeah, yeah,
any
yeah.
capacity over yourself, and you going to, because as a leader you're supposed to show them the way, you're supposed to guide them, and how can they follow you?
But it's happening even in the corporate world. There are some CEOs or leaders who think that by people surrounding them walking on eggshell, that is normal, to being bossy and to be dominant and be controlling. And
Yeah,
I
that
think
debate is there, like extroverts, introverts, and extroverts are also
oh,
the
it's not,
loudest
it's
in the
not.
room is the good leader, right?
What? No, it's
No,
nothing to
like
do with.
this is what people perceive, and they
I
think,
know,
oh,
I know, but
if
I
I'm
want
the
to
good leader, I
dismantle
have
that.
to always be the loudest in the room in the meeting.
Yes, I've noticed we get very passionate about this. Uh, I think it's the presence. That's what I want to go back to.
Mm.
Having presence, grounded in who you are, secure in your own identity, not feeling threatened by anyone, not by a question, not by a remark, even if that question is maybe a challenge, that you are at ease within yourself. Now that requires, I would say, self-mastery, because, sometimes people may provoke you with a question, And if you want to less out, and this is what I mean with ego. Well, wait a minute, who do you think you are? Because I'm the whatever, the big shot, and you are just whatever. There's already this kind of
Yep.
dimension going on. That's what I mean. If anger is connected with basically worship, image worship, that to me means dismantle it as soon as possible, because that will harm you always. I do appreciate that you highlight the cultural differences, because I think that's very important. I think there's a big difference between the West and the East, how people show emotions.
Yeah, because there's most of the time leadership, you see the examples there. People feel the more power you gain, the louder you're, the angrier you are, the harsher you are. And people are mostly fearful.
Yeah.
So I have seen, it was last year probably, there's an Indian guy in the corporate world. He was having a Zoom meeting and he was lashing out at everyone else, and he was literally verbally abusing them and
Wow.
using words, calling them names. And this is okay, that's your result. That's the sales you have done. And what are you doing? And the comments he was making, he lost his job after, because how everyone started posting it, and this is social media is quite powerful, so everyone was discussing and it went global, everyone was
Yeah.
talking about it,
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
felt okay, it's bringing bad name to the company, so get rid of him, even though probably they didn't feel that comfortable getting rid of him. They
Yeah.
feel like, okay, we shouldn't, but at that time, to save their faces, they had to do that. But again, that kind of expression of anger, I feel in the society as well, you feel that it's coming from a place of distrust. Because why I'm saying this, it's a long, you'll find the link how I made. First of all, we have this need to be heard,
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
And whenever it doesn't happen, especially leaders like this, and globally, this is happening. Most of the people, if you look around, you'll see most of the people in different countries, no one is happy anymore. They feel there's some kind of dissatisfaction there. Why?
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
feel like, okay, no one understands our grief and the grievances that we're going through, the suffering we're going through. No
Yeah.
one is listening to us. We are trying to tell them there's a problem. So,
Yeah.
from that sense of injustice, so
Yeah.
when there's injustice happening, you have your sense of threat is heightened.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, threat is coming. I need to protect myself. So
Yeah.
how would you protect yourself? So you have your boundaries up. At the same time, you feel like it's almost like a dog. So
Yeah.
a dog, when you're trying to attack a dog, and when it feels that someone is trying to harm it, it would keep on barking. And
Yeah.
sometimes, even when they feel that, okay, the stranger is approaching me, I need to
Yeah.
bark. So
Yeah.
that's the same way in the society. You feel there's so much sense of injustice. People
Yeah.
cannot be vulnerable anymore. Because
Yeah.
if you want to be friends with someone, if you want to have a connection, if you want to have some kind of bonding, you need to be able to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But you cannot be vulnerable because you have a sense of injustice. You are feeling the threat. You are rather
Yeah.
being vulnerable. You're always like very loud and mean.
Yeah.
This is
Or
one of the, yeah,
having our mask, or having our protection shields up,
exactly. So you're
as a
trying to save
defense.
yourself in a way.
Yeah.
And that's why we say that why does this world feel so negative these days? Because you see, it's coming from a place of distrust, so much injustice happening, and people feel like we don't want you. Say a particular president you don't want in the country, but then he comes for 2 terms, and
Yeah.
then you have to accept him and do whatever he likes to the fate of the people
Yeah.
and globally over the world to a certain
Yeah.
extent, because it will have implication. And it's
Yeah.
like we are trying to say, please don't do that. You're not listening to us. And that's
Yeah.
injustice.
Anger also comes by not being heard, and there is almost a sense of powerlessness with it, because you want to do something about it, but you can't do anything about it because, and that can all happen in childhood dynamics.
Yeah.
If parents use their parenting style abusively, that can be emotionally, physically, or verbally.
Mm-hmm.
How does a child respond on that? It perceives the adult, the older person, as more important. So who am I in order to counteract it? So it learns already early on, depending on your personality, to either subdue it or you become more aggressive. or rebellious. There are different ways of manifesting. But if that now manifests in our society, hey, we see it on the news when people feel like this is unfair. We live under a kind of limitation for so long, and they go on the street and start to vocalize it, and then it gets suppressed violently, which to me is an indication you have not understood what leadership is about, because the people are trying to voice something, and in order to shut it down by violence, you need to build a bridge. And in order to build a bridge, you have to listen first. And that's what I always say, even to leaders. The most senior you are in leadership, the first call of you is to listen first in your team. That means you're not the first one who voice, you're the last one.
Yeah.
This is all to do, if I'm really honest, a lot to do with less ego, because it's in that sense more allowing others to express what's really going on. And then you, in listening to it, then validating, acknowledging I'm hearing you, because that's very important, and not I'm hearing you, really making sure, is this what you're saying, so that you're really on the same page, mirroring, reflecting, paraphrasing, the listening skills, I think is therefore so important, so that people really feel, oh my gosh, you feel me now, you're getting me. And if that is happening, the energy already changes, because on that moment, also from a brain chemicals point of view, people feel more oxytocin being released in the brain, and that is a bonding chemical, and that starts to flow as soon as we begin to feel, hey, this person really sees me.
But that's the problem with the current world, isn't it? Because if you look around, I was discussing with someone back in the time, people felt no matter you want to do it this way, we have our voice. At the end of your term, we have our voting right, and we'll decide. So going back to that, I will again probably tie it back to our ways of expressing anger. I was saying anger suppressor, then I said anger projector, who lash out on other people. Then there's another one who's anger controller. Because you see, some people express anger. This is one way of saying that. If you ask them, are you okay? Are you angry? I'm not. No. I'm fine. I'm not angry. You're controlling. You're monitoring your anger rather than exploring it. What's the problem? No matter the wrong had been done to you, and you're still like, no. I'm not angry. It's fine. All good. And the last one that comes is anger transformer. So say, for example, that's the best way, who explores it, who does it through breathe. And we said TIPP, this temperature, intense exercise, pace breathing, and progressive muscle movement. Things like that. When you practice those things, you find clarity, but controlling is another way of suppressing as well. Because you're ignoring your emotions altogether. You're like, no matter what, I've been told it's wrong, and I'm doing a great thing, great service to the world and to myself by controlling it.
Yes, it becomes almost like stoic.
Yeah.
And in one sense, it's also a form of suppression.
But the difference with Stoics are they explore. Stoics, first of all, they ignore it, but then they explore. Okay, do I have control on the external? No, but I have control on the internal, my response.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yes, no, that's true. Good point.
I can add some ideas to it.
Go on.
I would rather say that when we are talking about the triggers, I said that I'll bring a point because I'm mindful of the time as well. We are already touching the hour. So I'll just quickly probably touch two more things. One is how we can gain more clarity. That's one. And the last one, how can anger be useful? So let's discuss on those two different issues. And I think we touched upon almost everything.
So the first one is how to get clarity. Well, clarity is about pausing and being curious and exploring, well, what is this emotion about? What is the emotion trying to tell me? What is this anger about? And what I think, I don't know if you touched upon that one, passive aggressiveness is another one that is also hidden anger. or even sarcasm can be a form of
Oh, yeah.
anger.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it can manifest in different ways. So the key is to go back to, well, if I sense this emotion, and sometimes people need help because, there are, you can Google them online, there are enough of these sheets of emotions, of variations in order to, well, which emotion do I feel the strongest in this moment in time? And then try to explore it. What is this about? What is the reason that I'm feeling this? Now, if you feel, if it's too hard, then I would say seek help in order for somebody else to help you to explore it. Because that's where clarity comes. Because if you don't know what the signal is flashing and you have no clue what it means, how on earth can you address it? It's the same like the pilot. If he doesn't know that, oh gosh, you're losing your altitude, and he doesn't know that the light means, he may use the wrong treatment and make the wrong maneuver, which brings even more danger. So you have to have clarity by knowing, well, what is it trying to tell me before you can have an action on it. And I would say then, either seek help or talk it through with a loved one.
This is when you say talk it through, that and also how to gain clarity. This is the idea that I really loved, and this is also you'll find many times in psychology they say that the idea of free writing.
Yeah, that's another way. Yeah.
So journaling, free writing, when you not letting the part of your brain that is logical, not to judge how you're expressing it, what you're saying is totally logical, doesn't matter. You just writing, either you journal or you write an angry letter to yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't have to post it to anywhere, you don't have to show it to anyone, just write. And there's a point when you're not judging, stopping yourself, saying things totally logical, doesn't matter. There's a point that the clarity, you'll suddenly see, okay, how did that happen? Why did I feel that? So that person, was it this? Or actually, this is not the person. This is something that happened to me 7 days back or 10 years ago. And this is what is reminding me. You just wake up to it. Yeah. And also another one is to keep an anger log, which another idea I really like, to figure out your triggers. So if you do it for a week, say, for example, you're writing down, today I got angry when I was in the shopping mall and this person did this or talked to me like this or didn't look at me when they were serving me, say, for example. You write it down, do these things. And then you suddenly figure out, I'm just, as an example, I'm saying, so you suddenly figure out that, okay, my anger trigger is probably whenever I feel that I'm not heard. I'm not looked at, or suddenly I'm not understood or something like that. That's how it comes up, because every now and then you write down, okay, today the shopping mall, this person who was serving me didn't look at me, didn't smile at me. And then I came home and I sat down to have dinner with my partner. And I asked her not to do a certain things or don't turn the TV on or whatever. And then she did that. So every time, if you can put it together, you feel like, oh, my trigger is probably, I felt anytime that someone is not listening to me, or someone is not looking at me, or they're not acknowledging my presence, that's when I get triggered. So things like that, you can gain clarity. That's
that's definitely, and there's a good one. The reason why I'm laughing is not to laugh at you, by the way. I hope it doesn't feel like
I'm trying to make up as I'm talking. I'm like, okay, what scenarios can I make up? Because the scenario is not planned at all.
No, it's relatable because I did it a while ago. I got annoyed by something, and it was a build-up, I realized, and so I just started writing, and I really started writing. And the interesting thing was, I expressed everything, like you said, no judging, and it all came out. And I would say it's not for public.
Exactly.
But interesting enough,
no, they say they even use swear words if you need to.
Yeah, if you need to. But what I realized when I was doing it, right, I began to realize, what am I thinking here? What is my assumption here? And I realized a lot of this was based on an assumption. That I didn't check out, and because I didn't check out, it started to create its own thundercloud, and that got reinforced, and then somebody triggers it, and then I'm thinking, oh yes, you see I'm right, and then I realize, no, I'm not right, because that was an assumption. And interestingly enough, I had a follow-up conversation a couple of weeks ago, and completely different than I thought it was. So it immediately dissolved. So sometimes I think triggers can be born, as you say, things that happened in the past, so it's worth exploring. If I'm not feeling heard, and that's every time a trigger, then where in your life have you not been heard?
Yeah.
Where is the strongest emotion? Because that means there is something there that needs to come out. In other cases, I think it's our assumptions that is part of the problem, or expectations we put on people that people don't know about because we have not spoken about that, but yet we still expect it from them. And because they don't behave in the way that we expect them to behave, because we didn't tell them anyway, but we expect them to behave, we get angry because they're not behaving in the way we want them to behave. That anger is completely misplaced. You with me?
It's probably expectation, but lack of communication.
Yes.
So then you realize, okay, that's my trigger, but have I communicated? You find out, that's your clarity.
Yes. Have I communicated basically what I wanted? So many people I see that sometimes on communications in social media, people want to mind read, I wish I could mind read. I say, well, basically what you're saying is you don't want to listen and basically communicate what you really want and need or express.
Yeah.
Because to understand somebody, if you really listen, you will know what's going on the inside, but that feels harder. So if you could just pop into, without them knowing what they're thinking, which is mind reading all about, then that's not learning.
On that note, I would like to add Valentine's Day is coming. So if your boyfriend or your partner asks, do you want flower or gift? And if you think that he will mind read you, don't say, no, I don't need anything. If you need it, let him know. Because if you say no, he might listen to you, a good person, then he won't get you any gift or any flowers. Then you'll get angry at him. Come on, why didn't you mind read? I wanted it actually. I was just being polite. Yes. So I feel it's very important that, okay, look, we shouldn't spend that much money probably at this time, but I would like to be treated. So it would make me feel special if you just communicate plainly. And then it's easier for both of you rather than mind reading.
Yes, and that's why it's so important learning to communicate what you want, what you need, what your boundaries are, what you want to allow and what you don't allow, what you tolerate and don't tolerate. Those are all things that has to be communicated. And the problem starts when people don't do that. That's where anger can result to anger, resentment and anger. And I sometimes think that anger could be avoided if you trace it back. Well, when did you start not talking about it?
It's really interesting how anger can create different movements in the world, say the civil rights movement, and a lot of other movements, and how many good things have come out of anger actually. But when you have channeled it in a positive way, rather than destroying things, just to express your anger, you're not thinking that's your country and the property belongs to your nation. And if you destroy it, and the money would come out of your taxes again when they have to rebuild. So you're not thinking.
You're not solving it. But anger, when anger is channeled wisely, purposefully, then it can have a beautiful cause. And as you say, we have seen that with the civil rights movement, where the anger became obvious more and more. But that was anger expressed but not verbalized in violence, and that's a big difference. The same reminds me of Gandhi. How he basically brought the British Empire to its knees by his way how he dealt with it, by non-violence.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about same thing with the Me Too movement, remember Ashley Judd, she expressed it, and when she did that, other women came forward. I mean, she expressed her anger because she thought, as I was saying, when something is done wrong, you need to vocalize it. And if you think that I shouldn't be vocal about this wrongdoing, then you let it sustain and it would be perpetrated on other people.
Yeah, and that is a classic example, and sadly still happening in our world. It happened during World War II. When people were silent, for example, Jews or minorities were picked up or abused or whatever, and people just remained silent. So I think the silence, as you say, will affirm things. And that's what this is a hot topic. As you know, I wrote a post about this related to the release of the Epstein files. I still wonder how many people in the higher circles knew about and remained silent.
Exactly.
Because to me, as a leader, and that's why I wrote my post about discernment, if you discern this is not right, and you're not vocalizing it well, you have the power and the agency to do so, then you basically play the same game.
That's why channelizing it, and also when you know something is wrong, because your post mentioned in terms of would you side with power or would you listen to the guiding passion of your soul or your values? So which one would you listen to? So end of the day, there had been some people had been selfish. They had their own self-interest. And on top of that, they're siding with the power. And there are some people also in your post, you mentioned about a couple. After the first night, they'd never showed up.
Yeah, they never want to go return back again.
Yeah.
So I think anger, it's interesting. So it all depends on what is the root cause of the anger. Is it selfish? Is it ego? Is it pain? Is it a violation? Is it about a trauma that has not been resolved? So it's so we cannot, just because somebody's angry, we can't jump to conclusions. We have to investigate, and that's why I believe we have to be detached, objective, and being curious and explore, well, what is this really about? Because it may show the same symptoms, but the cause can be completely different.
Yeah.
And therefore, allowing somebody to express what the anger was all about. How can we provide a safe space for one another to allow anger to be expressed in a healthy way?
Yeah.
Not in a condemning way, not to shame it, not to judge it, not to say, "Oh, you can't say that." It still needs to be respectful. I'm not, and definitely not violent. But how can we create that kind of environment for one another so that people can resolve their emotional issues? Because anger is only the top of the iceberg. Just as I said in my story, it was just a protection shield.
That's the thing, your clarity. And that's why I was getting at, like, with clarity, when you have the clarity, you need to do something with this. And if you do it, it will guide you to a very useful position. Say, first of all, I mentioned the Me Too movement, and I wanted to inspire people by citing some more interesting examples that I came through. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know about this. This is so much fun. So in 1963, Ku Klux Klan. So they bombed a Baptist church. And when Nina Simone, the singer Nina Simone, when she heard about that, she said to her husband that I feel like going out and kill someone. And the husband said, no, you will do what you do best. Express your anger through that. And she had written that song, Mississippi Goddamn, which is one of the best songs from the civil rights era for the movement, for different kind of movement. And people still feel quite inspired by that. And another important one, since you once asked me about SAS and Royal Navy and all. So the training during in US Navy SEAL, the recruits, when they are training, they're trained to use their emotion and their fear and the adrenaline they feel through the rage, because the pressure that's been put on them, to use that to give them energy to face the dangerous circumstances. And this is another way of channeling your rage. I mean, how you're using it. Two more interesting ones. Pixar? The animation, they have done animations for a lot of amazing movies in the world.
Yes,
so
yes.
Their executive at the time, when he was making a movie, Brad Bird, he had recruited a lot of frustrated animators. So his point was, so they are so frustrated, where they want to bring the change from their frustration and the anger they have in the system, let them do it. And they came out with that movie Incredibles. It broke all the box office record.
That's a different kind of anger. That's anger out of justice, anger out of this is no longer working anymore. This should change.
And they are not changing, say some people, they're holding on to it.
And that's a good point, which I want to add on as well then, because I think it may be relevant to listeners, because I see it happening in the corporate world. People who are misjudged because they are frustrated or maybe angry within the company. But if leaders and managers would start to explore, well, what is really this frustration all about? They will be surprised that either there's a lot of untapped potential or ideas not being expressed, but sometimes people don't have the ways or the tools how to express it properly, so therefore it may come out not nicely. But a wise leader will basically take them aside and say, okay, tell me more. What is this frustration all about? What's really going on? And therefore listening is just a powerful tool, because then it builds a bridge, and then people can basically express, well, this is really what I'm frustrated with, because I hit my ceiling and I'm not growing. And I get no promotion. I get all these false promises. Well, next year, and it's just a political game. And I want to grow. I know there's potential. A healthy leader would say, okay, we need to find a way. An insecure leader will basically, well, have a different methodology, which
It's
most
like,
of the
okay,
time...
I'm losing my power, and probably they're trying to take me out. So I have to be harsher to stay in the position and induce fear in them, so they don't ever think about doing this to me.
Yes, and that's, to me, reminds me of a beautiful example of the David Ogilvy. He was an advertising man, a Scottish guy, passed away many, many years ago. But there's an article, you can find it on, you can Google it if you
He's
dig
a pioneer, actually. I mean, his own company, Ogilvy Advertising.
Yeah, Ogilvy, yes. And he gave his executives, or people who got hired, and the Russian, I hope I say this right, Russian dolls, you know, the ones that you open up and then they become smaller, right? So any leader or manager who got this kind of present, initially, of course, what is this all about? This is a bit awkward. So they opened it, and then it, of course, became smaller and smaller. And then in the smallest one, there was a little note. And so then they opened the note, and then it says, listen carefully. I think this is so powerful. I wish that more leaders would embrace this. Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
If you hire people that are smaller than you, we become a company of dwarfs. Yeah. But if you hire people that are bigger than you, we become a company of giants. So many companies remain small because they hire people that they can control, not the potential that basically could break ceilings, because they're too scared to lose their position.
But the people who would really make it big, I've seen many leaders, they say that I always hire people who knew more than me, because I can use that potential to take me even at a higher place. Rather than getting intimidated by them, because I cannot do everything, and I shouldn't be feeling intimidated. I have been through it in my own life, and I won't mention it, I won't disclose it too much, but in my own career, I have faced it when I was in television, and by someone who shouldn't have been intimidated by me at all, or my TRP ratings, or my popularity of my shows, or whatever I was doing. But that person did that, and I lost my job as a result. So I'm saying this, if they see that, they'll realize that's, and I enjoy so much every time I think about this, because it shows how insecure that person was. Because someone who has the power to fire me, they shouldn't be feeling insecure. They should be happy that they had someone in their company. And if it's a TV channel, that person is gaining so much more audience through his shows for my TV channel. Rather than getting him out, I should see how I can nurture him.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, that helped me. And now this is what I'm doing.
And that's the positive side of it.
Yeah, channelizing your anger, you know?
Well, I do believe, because I've experienced it in my own life as well, when authoritarian leaders basically try to shut you down, your talent, your DNA will find a way.
Yep.
If it's not in that channel, then there's another channel.
Exactly.
And that's why I think I enjoy this kind of conversation, because to me, this is another way of expressing myself in a new way, giving sense of my purpose and adding value, hopefully, to people, listeners, and basically, our friendship, to celebrate it.
Exactly. I feel like we are getting livelier and livelier and more excited, right?
More excited. But I really want to emphasize this, because I wish that more leaders, CEOs, doesn't matter how you are in the ranking, if you get it into your brain to think about how can I replace myself with 12 people in 3 years?
Exactly. That should be the game, right?
That should be the game. But most people is basically how can I sit here for life and keep my position and get my bonuses and my paycheck. And I'm thinking that's not legacy. That's basically your own wallet. What if you would think about, well, who can replace me in 3 years' time? And I have 12 candidates because I mentored them, I coached them, I nurtured them, and they're even better than me. So because they are better than me, the company will grow.
Yeah.
It would be amazing. That has to do with security, with who you are in your own sense of self, that you don't feel threatened.
And also vision.
Insecure. Yeah.
It's a limited vision that I feel that's my goal, that I got this chair and it's for life. So you don't have any other goals in your life and you're not moving. That's the only goal you had and you're stuck now.
Yeah.
You're not moving from that position and you want to hold on to it. The amount of mistake that you will keep on making. And that's how many people get dethroned. We have seen emperors, we've seen presidents, we've seen prime ministers, and they have to leave the throne or the chair with so much dishonor. We could keep on discussing, I know, and for audience to know that we start with quite a bit of discussion. After we finish recording, we keep on discussing. So it's never ending, and it's a good practice for both of us. So on that note, I would like to thank everyone who has listened to us and has been supporting us. And also any topic, I always say, you leave your comments on YouTube, on social media, wherever we are posting. And Marco is posting it, Marco is sharing it, I'm sharing it on my own social media platforms. So please let us know, is there any other topic you want to talk about? Otherwise, we'll keep on talking about this very interesting topic and which are very relevant to our lives. And I hope today we talked about anger. We touched upon from different angles. We tried to guide everyone from our learned wisdom and from the things we have learned from people and from our own study and research. And we hope that we have brought something of value to you all. And we would like to have your support. So like and subscribe both our platforms. And with your support, you give us voice and that will give you a voice too. So even when you're not happy with the situation and when you like some change, we can do it together. On that note, have a good one.